Greg's package hasn't reached yet. The regular mail is really very slow. In fact, we're in our third knockdown, and our COVID cases as a per capita basis are now exceeding India, so I'm really locked up, and I'm not going to go down to the post office to get anything. That's an ideal time for me to start mass producing the carriages at the correct scale. So I've started working on a series of jigs, and it's turning out to be much more difficult than it was to make the 1 in 24 scale cannon and carriage. We're just going to go through the parts that we've cut out for the scale gun carriage. First of all, we have the bracket, which are the side pieces of the gun carriage. Then we have the front axle, which is also called 4-axle tree. The rear axle, which is called the hind axle tree. The transom, the bed, the coin, and we've actually made up two, which will give you an idea. And lastly, the bolster, which sits on the rear axle tree. I'm not going to go through the detailed making of these pieces. They were really made exactly as the larger scale was made up, just much smaller. And so I really struggled with making, for instance, the coin, which really every now and again one would fall on the ground and I wouldn't even be able to find it, it's so small. But as you can see, I finally got about 30 of these made, lots of extras because I'm sure I'm going to lose lots of them. These were a little bit problematic. We had to put CA to tighten up because we were having a lot of cracking. But once we did that and drilled out the center with a very small drill bit, we were able to mass produce these wheels fairly quickly using the vernier caliper to do the measurements and then just cutting them off with the cutoff wheel. For some reason I haven't quite figured out why I was having trouble getting the drill bit to dead center the hole for the axle on the wheels before I cut them. So I decided that rather than do that, I'd just cut the wheels off because it would leave me a perfect mark where the center would be. And then I'd take the turbo carver and just start a hole and then put them into this little jig I made up, which allowed me to drill the correct size axle hole. This really worked well. I got a perfectly centered hole, and a little more work, but it worked fine. The wheels that were properly centered were made a bit larger using the Cameron drill press. We are back on the Cameron drill press with another little jig which holds the bracket tightly in place and allows us to drill the holes required for the breeching ring bolt, the 3 gun and tackle loops, and the bed and transom bolts. These need to be in exactly the same position for each side of the bracket. It has taken me upwards of a day to actually make a complete gun carriage stand. The first thing we've done is cut a block of wood which is perfectly square, and on the table saw cut out the 2-degree alignment lines that are going to hold the brackets in place, and you'll see that that slips neatly in. Where we locate the brackets is determined by where the transom fits, and so to do that we actually fit these sides in, the 2 brackets in, and slid this down till we got a nice tight fit. And that allowed me to locate this block here, which is simply a block, so that when I am lining the two pieces up, it's the exact spot for the transom to fit. Now we're going to modify it to locate the hind axle tree and fore axle tree. And so to do that, we actually take the piece and mark very accurately so that it lines up perfectly. I hope you can see that, where the front and rear axles are going to fit. And then we take this unit and put it on the table. So the reason for these other two buttons is to simply allow us to place it on the saw and make sure it's absolutely level. Now we have all the pieces in. The rear axle, the front axle. So we can now assemble the piece. Now I could lie to you and tell you that the jig that you saw was the only one. That's not my way. So here are 1, 2, 3, 4 throwaway blanks. Sorry, 5. And here are working jigs, and I keep trying to tighten and make it more efficient. This is the original one that I made up for the 1 in 24 scale, and then these are various different ones. When I completed the first one, and I was so proud of it, and here it is, and I was showing it off on the Nautical Research Guild site, I suddenly found that it looked a little strange, and I found that I had made it back to front. The slope, the wide part was in the front and not on the stern of the cannon. And then there's a second one where I told you it's 2 degrees, and in fact when I used a measurement on the book to find out what was written in the book, this turns out to be 1 degree on each side. So it's 1 degree on the left side, 1 degree on the right side, which gave me the 2 degrees. And that's what the template is. So that means that these were much too wide at the rear of the cannon carriage, so I had to throw these away. And then I discovered that because of the scale that I was taking measurements of the small pieces, I didn't do that very accurately. So I went back to the larger scale, 1 in 24, and just divided that in half, and found out that many of the pieces I had made were too large. So I had to make up a whole new batch again. Welcome to Modeling 101. Having said all that, this last one that I've done is really perfect. It's all correct. It's absolutely to scale. It matches all the measurements in the book, and the cannon fits on it pretty good. So I'm going to fool around a little more and see if I can't make a more efficient jig, failing which I can reproduce this. It's just going to be a little slower. What this jig did is it allowed me to set up the brackets with the transom and the ring bolt. I did not put in the 2 axles, and that was made up in this frame. I'll put it in upside down because it'll work pretty good. And then stuck that so they all come together, and I get the frame coming out at the correct angles. And then I put the 2 axles on afterwards. In a perfect world, I'd really like to put the axles in at the same time and stick it all. So hopefully I'll get a jig that will do that for me. I've decided that these 2 jigs are fine. The first one for lining up the brackets, and the second simple little one for lining up the various holes in the side of the brackets for installing all the various hoops and links. So we'll see you hopefully next week or 2 when Greg's present finally arrives. See you then. Keep modeling.